Tag the Evogus Fulcha. Hi, hello, and welcome. John O'Sullivan from the Irish Pagan School, and we're here with this week's check-in chat and coffee talk. And so the thing that's on my mind really is, do I still get to celebrate New Year's, or does it still have significance since I identify as pagan? But before we dive onto that, I'd like to invite you to pop on over to irishpagan.school/free and pick up something free. So a whole lot of free resources, free classes at our Irish Pagan School, something to kind of get started as you approach your new year and your new growth. And it's there, it's available for you, and it's part of our offerings and dedication to getting real information out there about Irish spirituality and Irish paganism as it is at the moment. So, yeah, back to our topic. Do pagan people get to celebrate New Year's? Does it hold any significance? And so the reason why it's been popping along in my mind is because as an Irish pagan, I follow a different cycle when it comes to an annual routine or annual kind of rotation. And that goes back to the older cycles in Ireland, which is the fire festivals. So if you don't know, the four kind of main fire festivals in Irish paganism based on the cycle and seasons in Ireland are, of course, Imbolc, Bealtaine, Lunasa, and Samhain. Now, those are the pronunciations of those words. It's not ever and never has been Samhain and never will be. It is Samhain. Also, it's never Beltane. It's Bealtaine. So those are the words. It's Imbolc, Bealtaine, Lunasa, and Samhain. Now, Samhain is the end of the year, and that's what's recognized as the end of the year as we begin into the darker cycle or the darker time of the year in Ireland. And maybe it is because of the Ireland's kind of situation in respect to the equator. We do have very clear four seasons in Ireland weather-wise. Other countries may have like limited or less variation, but it's very noticeable when it is winter, when it is spring, when it becomes summer, and when it becomes autumn here in Ireland, which I absolutely love and I enjoy. And then, of course, in each of those seasons, there is a fire festival, which is an acknowledgement of that shift and that change and that movement in energy. And so a lot of people who follow the Irish pagan path have observances that go with those fire festivals and go with those cycles. Again, there's free resources on that link I mentioned about two of the four fire festivals. The rest will be coming in the future. And we even have classes about the fire festivals in the school if you want a deep dive about what, practices should be done at each particular time. But Samhain being the end of the year happens at the end of October, start of November. And of course, it gives its name to, Samhain, which is then Halloween, all that kind of energy and shift. And it's about acknowledging the departed, those who are dead, ancestors, and also the other world and the closeness of it. And by the way, there is and never has been a specific mention of thinning the veil. That is a different thing entirely. Because in Ireland, really, like the other world is very close, all of the time, to be honest. But we're not on another world chat. If you're interested in another world chat, let me know in the comments. But if I, as an Irish pagan, acknowledge my end of year being Samhain, then where does that leave me with New Year's? And so at the end of the calendar year, which happens in December, of course, we have New Year's Eve and then New Year's Day. And so I had a bit of a head scratch about it. And it's like, okay, well, I'm making these other observances. My personal spiritual practice and personal spiritual alignment is acknowledging these fire festivals and their significance in my life. So when it comes to New Year's, do I do something? Do I not do something? If I'm taking care of all of my spiritual well-being at these other four like points throughout the year, how do I acknowledge New Year's? And so I did. I went back and forth on it, and parts of me were like, well, I should just ignore it because it's not my new year. The end of my year happens at Samhain, and I'm beginning preparations for Imbolc, which is the return of spring, the return of growth. And so that's what the dark time is supposed to be from October, November through until February. Um, so you then have New Year's like bang smack in the end of December. So I thought, maybe I just ignore it. Maybe I don't celebrate it. Maybe I don't acknowledge it. But then that felt off for me because I had always acknowledged New Year's. regardless of whether I was identified as Catholic or Christian, and there was a tradition in my home growing up of opening the back door before midnight to allow for the old year to leave, and then opening the front door at midnight to allow the new year to arrive in. You know, and then it was spending time acknowledging family, kind of connecting with that, but then also going out the front door into the future to acknowledge and share with community and neighbors. And so I have been doing that for decades, even in my own places, even when I was living on my own, I would still go through that process. And over time, I developed my own ritual in a way. When I would open the back door, I would take a beverage, I would step outside into the back, and I would look at the sky and think about my granddad, who loved the constellations. And I would acknowledge my ancestors. Now, this was before I identified as pagan and moved the ancestor work to Samhain where it should be. I was still acknowledging ancestors. I was still acknowledging the past and where I came from, but I was doing it at that time, acknowledging that, I am a culmination of many different variables to make it to me in that particular moment on the cusp of midnight at the end of the calendar year. And then I would go out the front and I would think about tomorrows, all of the tomorrows that would come after that moment that I'm standing in. And so I was doing that for me. And even when, I would have a New Year's party later on and people would be over, I'd be like, I have a thing that I do. I would kind of explain it, but then didn't explain it because it was just me wanting to do my thing. And I felt self-conscious about it, honestly. And there were times where people were like, "Hey, we're celebrating," and like, well, it's like I sorry, I need to do a thing. This is a thing I need to do for me. And so identifying as pagan, shifting some of the ancestor work to Samhain, raised that question, like, do I still do New Year's or not? And so I have come to the realization, and just in the last few years, that yeah, I was still in the ritual, but every time I did it, every kind of time in the last few years, I always had this question in the back of my mind: Am I doing this? Should I be doing this? Should I not be doing this? Am I betraying my pagan spiritual path because I'm doing this other thing as well? And what it really has reconciled down to is it doing any harm? And the answer to that is no. It is me engaging in an active spiritual process or spiritual moment for me, accepting the past that has made me who I am in that moment, and then, offering it gratitude. And not the past wasn't always easy, let's be fair, but it's still the past that defines who I am in this now. And then stepping out the front of the house into the potential, the opportunities, and the variety and the scope of, possibility that comes from the moment, comes in the future. And so yeah, it's enough for me to keep doing that. And I'm not saying that it has to be done. I'm not saying it's an Irish pagan practice. I'm not advocating that there's people need to do this. No, this I'm sharing my personal spiritual practice. And for me, it's a personal spiritual moment that I give myself at that time of year. But I had another realization. And this comes down to a definition of magic. And so there's a definition of magic. I think it's Crowley or McAllister. No, I think it's Crowley. I'm gonna have to double check my quotes on that. But the definition of magic really is, magic is the creation of change in accordance with one's will. And so it's the generation of energy to create change in accordance with one's will. And when we look at New Year's, all around the world, globally speaking, people are gathering, people are sharing, people are acknowledging, people are generating a lot of energy and intention towards the new year, towards an ending of a cycle and the renewal of a cycle. And so, regardless of whichever way you believe or don't believe, if you even take a moment to look around, or even you consider how people talk about the end of December, start of January, people refer to it as a magical time of year. And so, yeah, there's a lot of energy raised, there's a lot of intention generated about, loving one another, being connected with one another, like, acknowledging cycles, acknowledging time frames, but then also getting personal about it, setting a resolution, setting like a dedication towards yourself to some aspect of growth you're going to engage in or some challenge you're going to overcome in the forthcoming year. And so, as everyone around the world in many cases, okay, everyone is, I'm falling into a philosophical all in some argument there. So, as a majority of people around the world, because it's not everyone, and so I need to make space to acknowledge that, it's not everyone, but as a lot of people around the world are focusing their energy and intent around gratitude for the past and acknowledging the opportunities and planning for purposes into the future, as a spiritual person, whatever the path you walk, it is a magical time of year. It is a time when, we can leverage a shift and a change in global energy and global intention, and putting ourselves in that moment to kind of, join with those tides and with that flow is crucially important and is very, very beneficial for us as an individual, but then also for family units, for community units, for friend groups. And just because I'm pagan, just because I acknowledge different cycles, doesn't mean I can't acknowledge those other aspects as well. And so those are the thoughts on it. I would like to say thank you very much for joining me for the coffee thoughts. As I said, it's an interesting one. And I often say it's important that we take the time to have those introspective moments. It's core to being a pagan. As much as we talk about the belief in polytheism, the belief in nature, or a meditation, there is an aspect of that which is about introspection and meditation. And for me, that's crucially important to understanding who I am, where I am, and what I'm doing, so that I can do right by me, by my family, by my community, but then also, do no harm against against those people as well. So, thank you for joining me for the coffee talk. I really appreciate it. Thank you for being part of the Irish Pagan School community. Gurav Mila Mahagat. Do make sure you pop along. It's irishpagan.school/free. So at the start of the year, if you're looking at intention, if you're looking at what you're going to do for yourself this year, and your spiritual growth is somewhere in that bucket or somewhere on that list, hop in irishpagan.school, pick up some free resources, and gift yourself that time and that offering, to take the on board the resources to grow in the right direction, hopefully. And from us here, Gaurav Mahagat, again, thank you very much. And until next time, look after yourself and Slán. Goodbye.